Welcome back. We're near the close of our second day of MCBK, our fourth annual public meeting, and this has been terrific. I know people are still trickling in from the work groups. We have 3 work group sessions: the sustainability work group, the standards and technical infrastructure work group, and the trust and policy working group, as you know, and really rich discussions and great engagement on all of those. So I'm glad we had those. I hope everybody's back. We're now going to take a few minutes to reflect on what we've heard these last 2 days. It has truly been amazing. And before I move to the next piece of our program, I want to thank everyone for participating and our wonderful speakers and presenters and everyone that contributed posters. This has just absolutely been a fabulous conference, and Chuck and I couldn't be more pleased with the content and the ideas and the energy that we've had and seen in this room and on the internet over the last 2 days. Now we're going to close with some reflections from 2 people that have been very much a part of MCBK from the beginning and watching this evolution. We have Leslie McIntosh and Peter Emby. Peter is on our MCBK steering committee currently, and Leslie McIntosh has been and was also the former co-chair and the inaugural co-chair of the MCBK Technical Infrastructure Working Group. And they're going to take a few moments, and we're going to hope that all of our connections are working well, that we can hear their comments, and so far so good. So let me give a brief bio before I turn it over to Leslie. Leslie currently serves in 2 positions. She's the inaugural executive director for the Research Data Alliance, which is part of a global organization developing recommendations for data sharing and interoperability. She is also the founder and CEO of Repeta Limited Liability Corporation, a company formed to improve scientific research reproducibility. Dr. McIntosh has experience leading diverse teams to develop and deliver meaningful data to improve scientific decisions. And before I waste any of her valuable connection time, I'll turn it over to you, Leslie, and then Peter, I'll introduce you before you speak.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for the patience with my internet connection. Hopefully this works. Really, thank you for the opportunity to let me reflect on this 4th annual MCBK meeting. You've done an incredible job, Chuck and Rachel, and the incredible team at the University of Michigan, Michelle and Janelle. We know you're behind the scenes working very hard to make it through another online conference at a time when we're all ready to meet in person. And it is no easy task to talk into a blank screen for most people, although I am certain Mark Musin could talk about metadata to anyone and anything at any time, regardless of an audience, but we can take that one offline. So what I'm going to do is recap the 2 days into some form that has been filtered through my lens, and then we're going to move on to Peter to give his reflections. So obviously the idea of computable and mobilizing computable biomedical knowledge is about knowledge. These were key in the keynotes when Dr. Deborah McGinnis talked about towards more computable biomedical knowledge with recommender systems, personal knowledge stories, meta descriptions for uses, and then a use case of CBK with diabetes, and talking a lot about food and bringing up provenance and actually making me hungry when she gave her presentation. But it was a great presentation, followed by Matthias Kretzler, who talked and really took home a use case of scalable computable knowledge for integrated systems biology, getting very personal and precise, and also bringing up the Atlas kpmp.org with his work in kidney research and nephrology. Today, we heard from George Strawn, outputting data from object to infrastructure. Our goal now is to do that more for data and really thinking us about the know-who knowledge and the know-how knowledge, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. So I'm going to have to go back and read a little bit more about that. And then we also heard from Mark Musin, who talked about the struggle with development of metadata for computable knowledge, and that we almost keep trying to munch on that, but we really need to integrate metadata to make data fair and to make knowledge fair, and then also brought up the FAIR principles for research software. So that really was talking about knowledge. We also got a global perspective of CBK from presenters Dr. Philip Scott from the UK, Dr. Guilin Kong from Peking University in Beijing, China, and Dr. Enrico Corriera from Australian Institute of Health Innovation. And some of the discussion I thought was really important on that of discussions about country by region, that it's really not different in the UK, but in China, there's a lot of funding in applying AI in healthcare, but it's different in concept from a learning health system. And then the interesting piece that stuck out for both Peter and me was from Enrico's perspective on algorithmic sovereignty and what they're discussing in Australia about who gets to build the algorithms and what are the national capabilities and responsibilities regarding sharing and importing algorithms. So some of my take homes for that were really the use cases, both in the present to present the need, capabilities, and importance of informed, curated knowledge. This knowledge needs to be balanced by equity, biases, and fairness, and not only have recommendations, but we need to help with the trust of the information that we have. And we need authoritative information and provenance. The presentations by the global CBK researchers shows the need for knowledge sharing across geographical borders as well. So that's really kind of the knowledge that we talked about in the keynotes, but there's also the structure of MCBK. There's a lot of discussion in the beginning with, and today as well, with Chuck and Rachel, you talking about greater reflections about where MCBK is and where it's going. And then of course, the reflections from Dr. Doug Van Houwen today, really talking and delving into the manifesto that provides the vision of improving health, reducing health disparities, ensuring knowledge is most current, and reducing that lag to knowledge. And the goals of MCBK of convening and organizing a community, setting directions for CBK, and acting to mobilize CBK. That's the organizational structure, right? The skeleton for which the working groups can build upon. The three working groups, the sustainability for mobilization and inclusion, have really done a lot towards advocacy through affiliations and advocacy through scholarship. The standards and technical infrastructure group has been working on 2 publications, and obviously a lot of work goes into those publications, categorizing metadata to help MCBK and guiding principles for technical infrastructure. And then the third working group, the policy and coordination to ensure quality and trust, leading a survey in the field to understand the landscape of CBK. And then they also conducted an activity of what makes people trust one another, and then also to move on to trusting knowledge. The CBK in action was highlighted throughout the poster sessions, as well in the discussion of applying CBK to address COVID-19. It was really nice to see those applications. And of course, as someone from a biomedical informatics background, those become very exciting because it really is taking thoughts and putting those into action. So that's my very quick cliff notes of what's happened over the last couple of days. And I just want to finish up my thoughts right now, just on kind of my reflections. And I think the big things, you know, if recent and current events surrounding COVID haven't taught us anything, it would be a shame. Not only is it the right time to have computable biomedical knowledge, it is the right time to have trusted and accessible computable biomedical knowledge mobilized across the globe. You know, we need to think about MCBK and CBK, where it sits not only within science, but where it sits within the broader community of which we live. And I want to use one example for that. So the current means for searching for information is through internet search engines. So through Google, through Bing, through DuckDuckGo for some of us who've tried to move over there. But these content search mechanisms are truly advertising platforms. These free options come really at a steep price, obscuring biases and conflicts of interest, and they do not sort based on trustworthiness. Again, they're driven by profit, not by knowledge, and we have to keep that in mind. So as I was hearing this in a very MCBK and attending this for my 4th time with a very different light, I realized that we've traded the ease of use with trusted sources. And where are those trusted sources in the time of a pandemic such as COVID? They become very important that we not only understand where the knowledge is, what's the trusted knowledge, and what's the misinformation. MCBK is on a mission to make that knowledge accessible and trusted. And I understand and even support it even more 4 years later. So I'm very excited to be part of this. Peter, I know that you want to, we've talked about some themes, so I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about those and what you've seen emerging around MCBK.
Thank you, Leslie. Let's see, is Rachel going to jump back in, or would you like me to just go ahead?
Oh, yay. Okay, great, Peter. I was wondering, I really do want to give you an introduction, even though I know most of us listening are familiar with you and you and Leslie's great teamwork in terms of wrapping this up for us. This is just something that we've really come to enjoy of our meetings in past years. Dr. Peter Embry is an internationally recognized researcher, educator, and leader in the field of clinical and translational research informatics, with numerous peer-reviewed publications and presentations describing his innovations in the field. Peter serves as president and CEO of Regan Street Institute, and he holds related leadership roles at Indiana University and the IU Health System. And as I mentioned before, and as you well know, Peter, you're a member of our steering committee and have watched this MCBK movement really evolve over the past year. So I'm happy to have to turn it over to you and hear your reflections from this meeting, and then just pass it back to me and Chuck when you're finished.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. And thank you, Leslie. Yeah, this has really been an incredible couple of days. And I just want to first echo Leslie's comments about really thanking Chuck and Rachel and the team for such an engaging couple of days and just a remarkable fourth MCBK public meeting. This is not easy to do, as we all know, under normal circumstances, and even more challenging in this virtual environment. So kudos to all of you. I think Leslie covered the material extremely well. So I'm just going to jump right to some of the reflections that I had in thinking through this last couple of days. And kind of the way my mind works, there were some themes that seemed to be emerging for me. And so I've been taking notes along the way and was going to walk you through some of those. The first of them is that it's just incredible, having been involved with this community now for the last 4 years, to see the momentum that has clearly been established now, the maturity of the field as it continues to move, and of this domain in particular, is clearly evident in not only the work that's been presented in the past, but certainly this year. And even in the midst of such a challenging time with the pandemic, the fact that there has been so much more progress is just really gratifying to see. So I think the acceptance of MCBK as clearly something that is here to stay, and the momentum that we are seeing build over the last 4 years is the first thing that kept coming through with every one of the presentations for me. In terms of that maturity, I think some of the understanding of MCBK in context. For instance, I really appreciated the presentation about, tying the actors and tools and activities to the patient journey and being able to really articulate what it is we're trying to accomplish with the MCBK movement with regard to what, was articulated initially in the manifesto, and now seeing that come to life in more of these artifacts and capabilities is pretty remarkable. The growing stakeholder community, not only represented by everyone who's here and has been engaged throughout this last couple of days, but also with the organizations that have already signed on to be a part of these activities, and that now have voted very clearly that we're going to continue to move things forward with the establishment of some kind of entity that actually will continue to move MCBK forward, I think really does speak to the maturity. And then I have to add to that the really remarkable presentations from our colleagues around the globe and the global reach of MCBK, and how relatively quickly that has really taken off and is now something that is being operationalized and led at all corners of the globe. It was really gratifying to see that. Clearly, another theme that I think maybe goes without saying, but it's worth pointing out, and it was certainly in the overarching comments by Rachel and Chuck, and then has been reinforced by presentations and posters, is the clear connection of MCBK to enable and as a key enabler of the learning health system. And the detailed discussion and considerations of how we operationalize, for instance, AI models for driving clinical decision support was another great example of that. There's obvious connections between those, but it's not just something that's connected. It's really inherent to advancing the learning health system. And I think that is now clear to everyone and is making its way into increasing publications, presentations, and we saw a lot of that the last couple of days, which I think is a really important reinforcer. There's also early evidence, and I would say early is an underline, but early evidence of impact. I mean, we're starting to actually see this not just as a conceptual framework and a concept and things that need to move forward, but really, I think, again, very wonderful to see represented in some of the presentations and posters, the early work and great progress that's being made. For instance, the examples of the responses of how MCBK has been applied in COVID-19 really stood out. And I know that's been, something that has transformed the world, obviously, and continues to be a concern, and really speaks to the not just the importance of MCBK from a scientific perspective and from a perspective of what we as informaticians need to be thinking about doing in order to improve health and healthcare, but really the impact that it's already having cannot be overstated. Having said that, I think it's also clear that we are in the early stages of what we need to accomplish, and I think everybody would recognize that. For instance, and we were talking a little bit about this during the breakout sessions on policy, I would argue we still don't have quite enough evidence to really demonstrate what are clear best practices. For an example that I was discussing during one of the workouts that I'll mention again here is, if the leader of a major health system came and said, okay, we want to operationalize MCBK as part of what it is we are doing to create our learning health system, money's no object. What do we need to do? I think we all would have now some early evidence to say, well, these are good approaches. These are some emerging best practices. But in terms of a holistic playbook, in terms of a consistent way of really operationalizing this, I think we all recognize that we're still in early days. And so that lends itself to the development of additional questions, a research agenda, and a practice agenda that I know, again, we've been working on through our practical working group sessions. And I think it's really essential that we continue that work because we are heading in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Another theme then is maybe the category of concerns or considerations as we're moving things forward. And there again, I'd like to sort of echo what Leslie mentioned about the comments, for instance, by Enrico around algorithmic sovereignty, which I thought was an interesting comment, bias, and really concerns around generalizability. This is something that I'm sure is going to be with us for some time, and it's understandable that it is, but it really needs to be called out and addressed, and really calls for the need for this community to really work together and ensure that we are collectively sharing best practices, establishing common approaches and standards, testing those, and developing our tooling, our processes, our policies, and our resources in a way that we can all be confident that even though there are inevitably going to be challenges as we begin to adopt and deploy MCBK solutions, we recognize that we're going to need to test and monitor those to ensure that we have the right kinds of impacts on health and healthcare and not the inadvertent damage or harm to anyone, which of course we all are aware of can result. And that speaks to another element which I think arose in multiple conversations, which is that about being equitable and ethical in terms of how we move things forward. This connects to the FAIR principles, and that was referenced certainly several times. And one of the things that occurred to me as we were going through the last couple of days was that while we think about findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable principles applied to data, and then think about how we would apply those same principles to knowledge, there are differences between what we need to be considering related to data versus knowledge. And while we recognize that, I think that it's something that needs to be further articulated and fleshed out so that in fact, we can align what those FAIR principles are to the knowledge considerations as distinct from data. And I think when we do that, one of the things that, again, occurred to me and I would put forth is that we probably need to add another letter there. And we talked a little bit about this in one of our workshops. We probably need an E at the end of that, maybe for equitable or ethical. And that, I think, would be something that is particularly important when it comes to knowledge as distinct from data. Finally, I just have to conclude with reflecting on how moving it was and I think appropriate, the remembrance of Milt Korn and the impacts that he had on our field and on this community in particular. I really appreciated that. And I know all of us who just thought the world of Milt and considered him a friend and colleague miss having him here. I certainly felt that very strongly throughout this meeting. I'm sure many of you did. And I was thinking about not only again as a friend and colleague, but also about the insights that he would have been sharing that we didn't get to take advantage of. But I also thought more so today as I approached this session, how I imagine that he would be very proud of seeing the progress that everyone has made, and particularly the progress that is being made by all of the leaders of the MCBK community to continue to move this important work forward, to see the progress, the momentum that has been presented here, and the incredible leadership of this community to improve health and advance science. And I know I feel confident that I could say Milt would be very proud of where we are. So that's how those were my reflections for the last couple of days. And again, I just want to thank you, Rachel and Chuck and the whole team for just an exceptional session.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Peter. And Leslie, I'm glad you're still with us. I appreciate both of you together giving us your insights and really remembering all that we've experienced in the last 2 days. There have been so many just terrific speakers and ideas and different components of this program that it really is important and useful to reflect on this, and to hear your thoughts and insights on this is incredibly valuable. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us these last 2 days and to really be attentive and to put these thoughts into words for us in this closing session. So thank you both so much. And now we'll turn over. Chuck and I will close us out here. We'll share a couple quick thoughts and really just move us along, but get people going, understanding what the next steps are. So Chuck, do you have a few thoughts you wanted to share?
Sure. So first of all, thanks to Leslie and Peter for those excellent summary comments. I think you captured so much of what this meeting was about what we achieved together. And coming back to Milt, Peter, I was so touched by your comment regarding how much Milt, had he been here, would have added to this meeting. And that comment you made is still cycling around in my head. I just want to make a couple of closing observations. As I've been thinking about everything that's happened in the past 2 days, I'm impressed with, and maybe impressed isn't the right word, with how much we have to do to mobilize computable biomedical knowledge. This is going to be hard. And at the same time, I am even more impressed with a sense that I have, based on the resolve that seems to be present in this group, that doing this is not optional, that improved health of individuals and populations requires this work to be done. We can't get where we need to go without mobilizing CBK. So as we become clearer and clearer collectively about what needs to be done, it seems simultaneously we become greater and greater in our resolution to do it. And I think if I carry one overriding thought with me coming out of this meeting, it'll be that. I was also impressed by the result of the poll and the You don't have to be a statistician to recognize that the responses were favorable toward the formation of a membership organization, and we made a lot of progress this morning understanding what kind of membership organization you all would like to see from the comments you made in response to the document that was circulated. We will be having a town hall to put further shape on those ideas, and I'm really looking forward to that, because coming back to what I said earlier, if this work is not optional, we better get to it, and a membership organization will be catalytic to that process. So before I turn this back to Rachel, let me thank you all for coming. Let me thank all the presenters. George Strawn went above and beyond the call of duty, recording a talk while suffering from a kidney stone. That is some kind of world record for devotion, and we really appreciate that. And of course, to thank the staff who contributed so ably and diligently to the success of this meeting. So, Rachel, over to you.
Yeah. Terrific. Thanks, Chuck. And my role here, I think one of my final roles of the day was to make sure you didn't forget anything. And you didn't forget much. You thanked folks. I want to add just a few more thank yous. Again, I want to echo thanks to everyone who's participated and our wonderful speakers and poster presenters. We know it takes time, an incredible amount of time to plan and and prepare your presentations and then to give them in this kind of format, which isn't always as gratifying to have that immediate feedback. But I think we did as well as we could and better than I ever imagined in terms of technology this year. And we really did have a high level of engagement. So that's due in large part to the excitement of our participants and supporters at the meeting today. Also for the folks here at University of Michigan, Michelle Williams and Janelle Burley and many others that were supporting the rooms. We really appreciate that. And then Russell Video, there's been an incredible team here behind us to make sure, even though Chuck and I are just 2 feet apart, but we've been sort of running around between different rooms and cameras, and there's another room where everybody that has presented today has had a dedicated laptop and a screen and a person that's been shifting all these cameras and scripts for us while Chuck and I have had eyeglass issues and things of that nature. So it has really come together well due to the support of many, many people. So I want to thank everyone behind the scenes that has helped. You mentioned the town hall and future follow-up. So we're going to be posting these videos and these materials on our website so that people can look and reference. And the work groups will be continuing to meet. And there was energy and ideas about additional work groups and sub-work groups. And so we just want to encourage you, get involved, bring people in that aren't here that should be here. We'll start with our work groups as a point of contact or our MCBK information mailing lists, but we will, assemble and facilitate how as best we can at this point. And it is exciting to see us move forward and to see the energy in the community about moving us forward into a more formal entity. So you will hear from us, and there will be other opportunities and town halls and webinars and things that we can continue to discuss. So with that will roll me into my last announcement, which is the Quarantini, the cocktail hour. And I know it's a little early on the West Coast. Maybe you could have a late lunch or a very early cocktail, and we won't tell anybody. You can turn off your camera or put it behind the scenes if you're worried about any kind of ramification for that. But Chuck and I will be joining very shortly. You can attend by clicking the Sessions tab on the left of your viewing window, and you'll see the Quarantini room. And feel free to you can take a quick break, grab a snack or a drink and join us just to sort of informally and casually reflect on what's happened the last couple of days, and certainly keep in touch and let us know as you have ideas or comments. We'll be reaching out for feedback as well. But let's please continue the conversation until we have our next meeting, and let's cross our fingers that it can be in person and that we can really enjoy each other's company and move some of this forward. So with that, I will say thank you again and goodbye, and hopefully we'll see you in just a few minutes in the networking room.